Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a book tag. The book tag I'm doing today is W is for Writer. This is one of the alphabet soup tags that was created by Sean over at Sean the Book Maniac. I was tagged this time around by Roz from Scally Dandling About the Books. Thank you very much, Roz. And I really enjoy these tags. Sean does a great job of coming up with the prompts, so I am trying to get this done quickly, so I'm just going to get right into it. The first question is, W is for writer. Give us an anecdote about a writer that you've met. So I don't know if I've talked about this on this channel before or not, but I'm from Maine, obviously, and one of the most famous writers from Maine is Stephen King. I've been a huge Stephen King fan since I started reading his books when I was a freshman in high school. And when I was in high school, I played basketball. In Maine, in eastern Maine and northern Maine, high school basketball culminates with a tournament during February school vacation at the Bangor Auditorium. And it's a big deal. It goes on all week. Schools from all over the state of Maine come to compete in this sort of basketball tournament. My team got to go this one year when I was in high school, and I happened to be the captain of the team at the time. And so Stephen King was known, he's from Bangor, he was known as a lover of basketball. He would often be found at these high school basketball tournament games. And so me and my team were there waiting for our turn to play. We happened to spot him and his wife in the crowd. And because I was the captain, I was nominated to go speak to him and ask him for his autograph and see if he would, sort of cheer on our team as we played our tournament game later that day. And he was extremely gracious. So I approached him out of the blue, kind of thing, explained who I was, and he said very graciously, I don't give autographs when I'm out with my family in public. I just can't do it. But we'll be watching and we'll be rooting on your team. He was just so nice about it and so friendly. And it always stuck with me because he's very, Stephen King has been very supportive of community things in Maine. He's given a lot of money, and especially in the Bangor area, for sports and children and libraries and that sort of thing. And it was a really nice encounter from a guy who's known for his horror fiction. He's just a really nice guy, very kind. And that's my anecdote about meeting a writer. Question 2 is, W is for War, the last great book that I read about war. That's definitely The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr. That was the book for hashtag Read So Lit in February, which is promoted by Dee Dee over at Brown Girl Reading. And I have never read any Leonard Pitts Jr. before. This is a historical fiction book about World War II. The opening scene is of a young man is a Marine. He's in a ship. He wakes up being thrown from his bunk in the bowels of the ship by some kind of an explosion and breaks his hip and realizes that the fleet is being bombed, and that's Pearl Harbor, and that's the opening scene of the book, and we follow that character from there on. And it is a wonderful book about World War II, yes, and about how what happens to one particular soldier or Marine throughout the course of that war. But it's also about race in America at that time, how we treated Black Americans who were in the military, how we treated Black Americans who were at home participating in all of the industrialization around the war effort, how we treated Black people just in our communities, and what it means to be white also is dealt with in this book. Fabulous book, super fast-paced, really heart-wrenching. Every chapter ends on this emotional gut punch. Really great book. Can't recommend it highly enough. Question 3 is, W is for www.writer.com. A writer you recommend or want to read whose first or last name starts with W. I have one to recommend, and this is The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. This is a nonfiction book about climate change and what will happen once we reach certain levels of warming. So this book just assumes that you are following the science and understand that warming is happening. And this book goes through many different levels of basically everyday life and how they're going to be impacted by warming temperatures. It is excellent. Yes, it is scary in places, but it's also just like a whole big heaping dose of realism of like, yeah, you need to just accept that this is what life is going to look like. And think about what that will be like, and think about what needs to happen in order for us to adjust to reality. Definitely recommend. Question 4 is W is for wait and see. A book or writer you're not ready to try yet, and why? For that, I picked a book that's been on my reading list since I was in high school. That is Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward, Angel. This is a book that's on my classics reading challenge that I have been working my way through since I was in high school. This is sort of like a Southern American novel. It follows a man named Eugene Gant, whose wanderlust and passion shape his adolescent years in rural North Carolina. And I believe this is like a 20th century, early 20th century American type book. It's not so much, I have a hard time with Southern white American male writers. So I don't always love that particular subsection of literature. And so this has never really particularly been high up on my list to get to. I want to get through my classics reading list, and so I knew that I would read this eventually, but there were many books that were in front of this that I was more interested in reading, basically. But I am glad to finally have a copy. I just recently got this copy, and so I am glad to finally have a copy, although it is a super chunker, so that's another reason why I'm not particularly excited to read it. If you have read this book, please let me know what you think of it, and encourage me if you think it's a good book. Hopefully that will help me pick it up sooner rather than later. Question 5, W is for what's the title? A book with at least 2 W's in the title. For this one, I also picked a book that I read in February. That is The Known World by Edward P. Jones. So that's 3 W's there on the book cover. And you guys have heard me talk about this book in my last few videos. This is a historical fiction book that takes place in the years leading up to the American Civil War. It takes place in the South. It's about a freed black American who owned slaves, and about that community around that person. It is excellent. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Question 6, W is for woman. A great book you've read recently by a woman. For that, I want to pick the first book that I read in 2020, and that is Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This is book 2 in the Murderbot series. This is science fiction about a Murderbot, which is an being with artificial intelligence, not human, and the Murderbots was the whole premise behind the series is that Murderbots were designed as basically security forces, bodyguards, private security, that type of thing. They're just basically machines, robots, but they have enough artificial intelligence that they look human, act human, but they don't have human emotions. They don't procreate or anything like that. And this particular Murderbot that we're following is trying to gain his freedom, basically, or its freedom, because it's not he or she. It's trying to gain its freedom, and each book is basically an adventure on that journey to gain freedom and to determine what it wants out of life. Excellent books, very sort of adventure driven, but with this whole idea of what is human wrapped around the books. They're great. Question 7, W is for word. one you've encountered recently in your reading that was new to you and or your favorite word. So this is a word that I encountered in something I was reading in February that I had never heard before. And in fact, I thought it was a made-up word until I looked it up. And that is historicize. I will put the book on the word on the screen so you can see how it is written. Historicize, which is defined as to treat or represent as historical. Historicize. It was a word that came up in The Yellow House, which is a nonfiction book about the author's life growing up in New Orleans and her family, and how her family, basically things that happened to her during her life in New Orleans as it related to their family home, which they call the Yellow House. And historicize came up in that book. My favorite word is obstreperous. I love the word obstreperous. I love to tell people they're being obstreperous. I am often obstreperous. It is a great word. Let's see. Question 8. W is for weary. A theme, plot twist, and or cliche that you're getting damn tired of. So for me, the thing that I hate the most in fiction is the big secret plot line. When two grown adults are keeping some key piece of information from each other, and it's causing all this conflict, and all the conflict would go away if the two adults would just have a conversation and talk like adults. Use your words, people. Hate the big secret. It's really irritating. It comes up all the time in romance novels. I find it super irritating. If any problem or conflict in a book could be solved by two people having a straight up conversation with each other, that's going to irritate the crap out of me. Question 9. W is for whippersnapper. A writer who writes well at a young age. I would like to shout out again My Time Among the Whites, Notes from an Unfinished Education by Janine Capo-Cruchet. She is a young Latinx woman who recently wrote My Time Among the Whites, and it's all about her experiences growing up Latinx in the United States and what that means, basically, in today's culture. She writes with humor. She writes with a lot of understanding of the big picture and how it relates to her as an individual. She writes with a lot of heart and very, in a way that was so clear and compelling and engaging. I was just blown away by it. I thought it's crazy to me when young people who sometimes if you're my age, you might think, well, they don't have that much life experience. How can they bring, what kind of words of wisdoms can they bring to this? Well, Janine Capo-Cruchet just shows me that it's not about your age. The words of wisdom do not come necessarily from those among us who have years on their bodies. And I would highly recommend you picking up My Time Among the Whites if you have not. She's an awesome writer. Question 10. W is for weakest link. A book in a series or a favorite author's oeuvre that wasn't nearly as good as all the others. I figured I'd come back around full circle and end my this tag with a Stephen King book. I love Stephen King. I read all Stephen King's books, but The Tommyknockers is hot trash. This book is an actual dumpster fire. So I haven't read it since it came out. I read it when it first came out, and it was published in 1987. So I probably didn't read it when it first came out. I must have read it a little bit after that, because I was in 8th grade in 1987, and I didn't read this until high school. So I read it soon after it came out. But before it, I think there's a movie now. I think I read it before the movie. This book is Stephen King's attempt to write an alien invasion novel, and it just is awful. I think it's during the time period when he was really messed up with drugs and alcohol, and it shows. This book is all over the place. I cannot recommend it. If you want to try Stephen King, I can give you other recommendations, but please, dear God, stay away from The Tommyknockers. It's terrible. Okay, question 11. W is for whosoever. Tag wantonly. I of course did not prepare before I started this tag, and so I am going to put it out there to anyone. If you have not yet done this tag, the alphabet soup tag W is for writer version, please do the tag and let me know in the comments down below that you've done it, and I will come watch it. And until next time, I'll talk to you later.